And we're live. This would be LinuxInstall.net episode number 111. Sounds like a big number. We've been
Three
around
ones.
for a while. 3 1s.
1.
Snake Eyes plus 1.
Here we go.
Something I shouldn't say.
Okay. So, my name is Brian Wagner. With me is Mr. Joseph Luzzi
Good evening, sirs.
and Mr. Walt Jevack.
Hello.
And so, Joe, what have you been up to this week?
Trying to dry out my basement from last week.
And how have you been using Linux to dry out your basement?
Linux really has not come into play there, Brian, I hate to say. I really don't have Linux controlling any of the equipment that I was using to do this task. No, in the past week, I really, besides working, that has been about the extent of it. I mean, I really haven't been able to do much on my computer. We had some family problems going on here, some illnesses and stuff. So between that and the basement and just everything else, I have been using Linux at work full time. How about you, Brian?
I personally am back on on Linux Mint 15.
You almost said Ubuntu.
I almost said Ubuntu. I did try Ubuntu. I couldn't get past. I still don't like Unity. So I had to go back to Mint 15 because I couldn't. I don't know. I feel really weak for saying this, but I could not figure out what in the world the problem was with the video camera on my phone or on my computer. I was tired of everything being in 8-bit mode. It looked really annoying. I still obviously have an issue because everybody's saying there's some separation between what I say and what my mouth is doing. And I'm actually on a different camera tonight. I am on a Gear Pro instead of the one built into my laptop because I like the wider angle.
Now, what's the resolution that the Gear Pro actually does?
The Gear Pro is supposed to be doing 720, as opposed to the camera in my laptop is supposed to be doing 1024. So it's supposed to be doing full HD.
Right.
But I don't know. I like the look of this camera. It's a little washed. It's a little grainy right now, and that's because I don't have enough light. So I'll work on getting more light for next week. But I kind of like this one better. It's got a wider angle to it, and I don't feel like the other one. I feel like I'm way too close to the screen. This one I don't.
Then the more light you get, the more cooling you're going to have because it's going to get hot as hell down there.
No, because actually it won't be because the lights that I have are compact fluorescents, so they're not very hot at all.
You can do lighting like I do. Just open up some white windows behind you, and
Now that you mentioned it, Walt, I did play around with opening up some white windows. If I switch this over, this is a white window. It's a little bit better. It is a little bit better, but then I have to look this way to look at everybody. I guess I could move the. I got to play with some stuff. I can do that. So I'm not sure I have my screen turned all the way up too. That might not be full.
You got to get more feng shui.
I should get more feng shui, huh?
Yes.
For some reason, turning up the brightness on my computer locked my computer up there for a second.
Yes, it did. Thought you were going to drop out of the hangout for a second. I was going to be like, yeah, this is going to be the start of a great episode.
and finished on time.
And shouldn't mess with stuff while we're recording. So back on Linux Mint 15, everything is back to normal, working as it did before. Again, can't say enough for loving the fact that you don't have to blow away your home directory when you want to rebuild a Linux box. It's a wonderful thing. Because I had just done this, I actually had marked down all the software that I had to reinstall, and I had actually put it in a little script for myself, so I didn't have to do it all. Since I already had everything, the latest versions of everything downloaded, I didn't have to go grab anything. I just ran installers until everything was installed. Configured my backups back up. By the way, that's another shout out to the folks at CrashPlan, because it's really cool when you rebuild a box and you want to not have to re-upload everything in your home directory. You can just adopt a machine.
Mm-hmm.
And I adopted my machine, and then it didn't do any of that. It did some syncing just to make sure that anything new got picked up, but didn't do anything else.
No, that's
Yeah,
cool.
it's a pretty cool feature. I've done that before too on mine. I've done on a Windows box actually. That wasn't
And
mine. It was somebody else's in the house.
yes, and it was nice. It was very very cool, and I could have restored it had I been missing anything, which I wasn't. Had I been missing anything, I could have restored it. So it's very cool. So, Walt, what have you been up to?
I too have been busy with other things. I did manage to rescue an old Dell desktop today at work. Put Xubuntu on. Everything worked pretty good except for that URL block bar issue that I was chatting with you about. But I have a feeling that a updated version of Firefox will probably fix that because it doesn't occur anywhere else.
Well, I'm going to rip on Ubuntu Studio later, but
Well, Studio's not Xubuntu. We're gonna keep that separate.
well, we are. Yes. But anyways, and so you got that on there. Other than that one weird issue where you can't see the stuff you're typing in the search bar, which is
No, you can see it. It's
Oh, you
just
can
once you hit enter and it goes to the web page, then it blocks it out. And then if you click in the bar again, you can see everything and you can type whatever you want, and then you hit enter and then it goes to the page, but it then blocks it out.
It's a feature.
It doesn't
it's a
make a lot of
feature. It
sense.
sure sounds like a feature.
Sounds like a very poor add-on.
Yeah, well, it's a clean install, so there's no add-ons. That's what I assumed. But Ubuntu's a 0.00.01 release behind. There's been a patch put out that they haven't pushed yet, so I'm assuming there's a couple of things that probably needed tweaked, and I'm sure that's one of them. But yeah, other than that, not a whole lot of computers this week in general.
Cool. You know, I was thinking about this, so I'm always working on the show notes while we're doing the show, but I was just thinking about this, Joe. If anybody's listening to this podcast, between you and me, they're going to think that Ohio must be lowlands because everybody gets flooded.
Well, yours is your issue. I don't know. This is the first time that's really ever happened here. I mean, just the amount of water we got that one time was, or like last Monday was just insane.
Yeah, and we didn't get flooded out per se, but we did get a lot of water.
I mean, I think some people were saying we got upwards of around 5-6 inches within a couple hours.
Yes.
So, and ditches around here can only handle so much water.
Yep.
Yep.
Same here. So, but anyways, no, we don't live in that low of land. It's just that we've been getting really weird high water levels.
Interesting weather patterns going through.
Yeah, interesting weather patterns going through the last couple of weeks. Well, last couple of years, actually.
Yes.
So all right, if that covers everybody, I think it does. Let's move on to what we're talking about Linux this week. And Joe brought up the first thing, and that is that Mr. Jono Bacon is going to be leaving Canonical shortly, I assume.
Yep.
I don't remember seeing a date, but shortly.
He did have, if you went out to his blog, he had a nice write-up there as far as where he's going, what he's going to be doing. He explains why he left. He had no issues at Canonical. There was no conflicts and no anything. He really liked it. He wasn't even looking, he basically stated. It was something that just was offered to him. It was a different type of opportunity. Something that's completely doesn't even appear to be Linux-based. But it sounds like it's going to be a great opportunity for him, and I'm sure he's going to do great. It was pretty cool that we got to meet him at OLF last year, so I'm really glad we got to meet him and actually, see him speak when he actually was working still at Canonical.
When he was working doing Linux stuff, yes.
Yes, yep. So that was pretty cool.
But you're kind of burying the lead. He's going to work for X Prize, which is like freaking awesome.
Yes, I mean
he's going to go.
That's one of the reasons why
did the SpaceX, or that is the reason why we've got a commercial space industry now, because they offered $10 million for space flight. They did whatever the Google one was. They've done
several
launch prizes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So These guys, when X Prize does a prize, it's millions and multiple millions of dollars usually.
Yeah, that's something you really can't turn down.
Yeah,
No.
I mean, it's probably something that'll come around once in your life, is my guess.
Right.
You're not going to find too many opportunities like that come to you and are say like, hey. I mean, so I'm sure he thought long and hard about it because what I think he said he'd been at Canonical 8 or 9 years. I think it was.
Yeah, which is just amazing to me because I remember listening to Lug Radio when he got the job and how excited he was about getting the job being the community manager, and I didn't realize it had been that long ago.
Yeah. And I mean, and if you think about it, I mean, the Ubuntu community has definitely grown, you know, and he's had a lot to do with that.
Sure.
As far as, you know, everything that's happened with them. So
He
he's done
literally
some really
wrote the
good
book on
stuff.
community.
Yeah, I was just going to say that.
He wrote probably one of the standards, The Art of Community, which I've read parts of. I haven't finished the whole thing, but I'm not a community manager, so it doesn't per se apply. It is helpful. He has some good tips. Other than that, good luck, Jono. We are going to miss you, and glad we got to meet you before you stopped doing Linux, because we'll probably never get to meet you now because I'm not going to be participating in any X Prizes in the near future.
Yeah. That's. I'm guessing we're not going to be, you know, be asked to do anything with those in the near future.
Not really, no. So, the next topic is, I mentioned in my introduction that I switched back to Linux Mint 15. And here's the backstory on this. So I have 2 hard drives in this laptop, which allowed me to test a little faster than normal because I could get something working and then just totally play with the other hard drive. I had tried Ubuntu Studio. That's what I was on for the last 2 weeks, trying to get that working. I finally gave up after 2 weeks of a couple hours here, a couple hours there. I mean, I didn't spend 2 weeks working on it, but I probably put 8 hours into trying to get the video to work correctly. Everything from everybody I could find, all the stuff on the web I could find, all pointed to stuff I'd already done and didn't fix it. So I had to, at a certain point, cut bait, and I did. And so I went back to 15 as my primary thing, and then started playing with other ones. Because I was thinking, well, you know, 15 works, let's go to 16. And I went to 16, and believe it or not, 16 is less stable and found less of my hardware.
Really?
Yeah. It was kind of annoying, actually. I was on 16, I booted up my machine, it boots the live CD perfectly fine, it installs fine, and then after that I log in and I don't get any bars, nothing. I can't switch to, you know, try to do a Control-Alt F1 to get to a terminal session to see if I can try to troubleshoot it, and it won't even let me out of X Windows, basically. It's locked up really tightly there. So
Interesting.
So yeah, so my big comment about Studio is I don't understand why Ubuntu works so perfectly and flawlessly by comparison. And it's not perfect, it's got its issues, but Ubuntu installed without an issue, didn't give me any problems, seemed to have a lot more testing done on it than Ubuntu Studio. Installing Ubuntu Studio almost felt like going back a long ways, like to Ubuntu 8. It's that level of not polished. I mean,
we've talked about this on early podcasts when we've talked about some of the earlier versions of Ubuntu, and we were discussing how one of the things that with each iteration that's coming up every 6 months, a lot of the things that they worked on over the years is basically the installer. It basically seeing more hardware, it being easier to install, faster to install, and things like that.
But that's the thing. It's the same installer, but it doesn't detect the hardware to the same level.
Well, then it's obviously not the same installer.
Right. I don't, and that's what I don't understand. Why wouldn't you use the same installer? It's all Ubuntu. Why wouldn't you just install the different packages? I mean, what should be the only real difference underneath is the Windows Manager and those parts, not.
Well, I mean, I don't know a whole lot about how they do any of that, but if they had to modify the installer to install all of their specific software and or any tweaks that they've done, that volume of work might actually be hard to port to the next version of installer. So
Yeah.
although it's going to install the latest packages, the installer itself still might be old.
Yeah.
What version? I haven't played around with Studio much. What version of the Studio are they on currently?
The version numbers are parodied with Ubuntu, so it's 14.04.
Oh, really? Oh, so it's basically still, even though it's not really.
And it has all of the same packaging. Base packages are all the same as Ubuntu 14.04. It just doesn't have. I mean, it not doesn't have. It uses XFCE for the window manager, and it installs a lot more, like all the audio managers. So it's got, which is part of the problem. It's got too much. It really does have too much installed.
Yep.
Because it's got Pulse installed, it's got ALSA installed, and it's got Jack installed. All three installed. All three trying to manage my audio devices at the same time, which doesn't work. So they're constantly starting and stopping. And then if I turn certain things on, it doesn't work. Joe, you had said you were having problems with Audacity crashing, and I was like, oh, I never have any problems.
Mm-hmm.
On Ubuntu Studio, I had problems. And I'm like, well, this is what Joe was talking about. And I was like, wow, this is weird, because when I was doing Audacity on Mint, it was fine. It was flawless.
Yeah.
Flawless might be going a bit far, but it wasn't a problem.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we've all ran into that before, where the more stuff you install, the greater the chance there is of cross-contamination, and one app breaks another app due to a lot of the stuff we talked about last time. Dependencies, versioning.
Yeah, the stuff we were talking about, like where Docker would be helpful,
Right.
because it would contain stuff and keep the versioning separate. You wouldn't have the stacks there. And actually, after that discussion last week, that was one of the things I was thinking about, that maybe something like Ubuntu Studio would be better if they did some type of containerization for all the applications that need Pulse, and all of the applications that rely on ALSA, and all of the applications that rely on Jack, and build them into containers, and then you just fire up that container, and then it doesn't affect anything else.
Yeah.
I don't know how that would work with controlling the hardware. That might get to be quite a complicated dance, because you've got to determine which one of them gets the microphone versus doesn't, or which one gets the headphones versus doesn't. That was another problem that I had with Ubuntu Studio that I haven't had with anything else, is in all the other ones, whatever I set the system default to, as far as whether it's the headphone jack in my laptop, or whether it goes back out through my mixing board, which is the way I'm listening to it right now, all of those options, whatever I chose, it did it. All of the sound went to that spot, and everything else picked up on that's where it was supposed to go. With Ubuntu Studio, everything would go to a different thing. So I would fire up. That's why you guys heard when I was 8-Bit Me and we were joking around about me being a Sega CD. The only reason you guys heard the music is because Ubuntu Studio wasn't doing what I expected it to do, which is to play it into my headphones, and it played it through the speakers on my laptop. And so it kind of caught me off guard, and I'm like, well, none of the other Ubuntus do this, and none of the Mints do this, and to be honest with you, Fedora's never done that to me. Like, whatever I set the default to is where everything goes, unless I go in and manually change it in that application.
Yeah.
Right.
And it made it a real pain when I was trying to edit. I was trying to record the intro for the show for those last 2 weeks, because I would try to record the intro and I kept forgetting that it was defaulting for some reason to the speakers in my laptop. And so I have a soundtrack playing, but I don't want that soundtrack coming through on my audio track. I only want it, I want the pure music and then my voice to be two separate things. And this was actually mixing them together. So it just had there was just a bunch of little things like that were just really weird and really annoying. And so this weekend I tried going to straight Ubuntu. That lasted for about an hour. And it wasn't that it was too hard to find anything, or it wasn't that it wasn't usable. It was usable, it just wasn't something that I liked. It wasn't the way I like it. And that's the great thing about Linux, I don't have to stick with it. And then I tried to do Ubuntu 16 and Ubuntu 17, and I lost functionality in 16 and couldn't get 17 to work right. And then I realized it's an RC, and I don't feel like fighting with an RC. So I'll wait till they deem it as complete. But even if I stay with 15, something I didn't realize until I was going through all that, or I guess I did realize it, but I didn't focus on it, was that this version of Linux will be supported until 2017. Or 2016, sorry.
Wow.
So I have like 2 more years of this being completely supported by them, and then another year where they'll do security fixes after that, if I don't switch. So I'm in no rush to get to 17. When 17 is fully baked and fully ready, and they declare that it's got all of its bugs fixed, I will try 17 again.
Yeah.
And hopefully I won't have the same issues that I'm having with 16. So.
Yeah, unless you need new software anymore. I mean, your major components, the web browser gets updated even in the old versions. Like you said, all your security stuff gets done. So you might not have the newest version of GIMP, but if you don't need one of those new features, who cares?
Yeah, I could go back to the version of GIMP I first used 10 years ago, and I wouldn't. It didn't have any, wasn't missing any features for me then.
Right.
So.
Yeah,
concerned.
Worst case, maybe you could pull something from a backports repo or something too, or do a manual install, and it's not like you're locked out.
Yeah. And I've had to do that before, and that's why this being on 15 is fine. Being on 17 will be better because that's based on an LTS release, which means both Canonical and Mint are going to support it for that whole time.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, I did that on my work machine. I went from the 1204 LTS to the 1404 because for everything I did at work, it ran just fine. The web browser updates was really my main concern, and Flash and things like that. But all that continued to get updated. I didn't need anything else. Now, I will say, though, and every time I say I installed Xubuntu on something, you cringe, because I think now you've made those two Linux distributions synonymous. I'd be curious when you have time, if possible, if you did an install and to see how many issues persist versus Studio.
Oh, versus on this laptop?
Yeah.
I could try that. I still have that second hard drive. I am regretting not installing 15 on the SSD again.
Again?
It's just, I told you I was swapping back and forth between them. So
what do you have on the SSD right now then?
I got so ticked off at Studio that I wiped the SSD.
So there's a bunch of zeros, is what you're saying.
There's a bunch of zeros.
So you're telling me you're using your SSD as your data
I'm
drive?
not using my SSD as anything right now. Right this minute, it's not doing anything. It is sitting in my machine. It's a PCI card not doing a damn thing.
Warming the laptop.
Yeah. Not even, because it's not getting any use. There's no electrons even going to it. No, I will.
Blasphemy. Blasphemy.
It is blasphemy. I know.
I can't even say anything right now. I'm just stunned.
Well, but part of the reason why I didn't switch it was, so having your home directory off on its own partition is a blessing and a curse, right? I now can't really change the structure of that disk beyond this is where the OS goes, this is where logs go, this is where swap is. I can't change where that home directory is. So I'm kind of locked in to the disk layout on my disk. And right now I'm trying to figure out why my home directory is all of a sudden 70 some gig of disk space. And I'm not really sure how it got to 70 gig, but it is. So I couldn't even temporarily move it to the SSD. So
My guess is it backed up some of the OS somewhere.
well, yeah, that was one of the funny things. So I've been using this application Drive, which is Google Drive for Linux, and it's got its limitations because it's not the official Google Drive app. It doesn't. You have to tell Linux what to do with the the Google Doc naming, and tell it where to go to start those things. But it does do all the syncing, so all of my Word documents, all of my Excel spreadsheets and stuff like that I put up there, all the pictures, all that stuff syncs without a problem. I did discover that it doesn't just use the drive. It depends on how you start it. If you start it from the command line, it will assume that the directory it's in is the directory you want to be your Google Drive directory. May or may not be true, which for me was not true. And I just kicked up Drive and walked away from my computer for the night. And then I came back in the morning and it was still uploading, and I'm going, I don't think I have that much stuff that should still be uploading 12 hours later. And it turns out I did it from a different directory than I should have, and it uploaded everything in my home directory, or in everybody's home directory at the root of the home directory.
So you've done a true backup. You're using Crash Plan. You're now using Google Drive. So you have multiple offsite backups. You are probably the most secure person on this podcast.
Yeah, thank goodness I stopped it before it finished. And also thank goodness I bought a Moto X, because the Moto X got me 50 extra gigabytes of disk space on Google Drive. Nice. So I could afford the 60 gigs worth of, or 50 gigs worth of stuff that it had uploaded before I stopped it, instead of blowing out my 15 gig.
Now,
so
would it
required a lot
would
of
it have kept going, or would it have stopped once you hit 15?
I would have stopped.
It would have stopped.
Yeah.
At least, well, I mean, it probably has a fudge factor, but it'll, eventually. So
it wouldn't have gone up to 70.
It wouldn't have gone to 70, but it might have gone to 17.
Yeah.
It would have been funny if they would have gone to 70 and then they just sent you a bill. Here.
That's what I was wondering.
Extra drive space.
Yeah.
We're just going to charge this to your Google Play account.
Yes.
Take it right on your Google Wallet.
Thank you for taking the time to configure your Google Wallet and getting. Guys, did I show you guys this? I actually have. Where'd it go? I actually have. Oh no, where is it? Of course, I can't find it when I want to show it. I actually have a Google Wallet card.
Oh, yeah.
Google Wallet MasterCard. I'm not going to flip it around because it's got my number on it. But
I was going to say, should you even be holding that thing?
No, I knew the front. The front is just a. You can't really see it. It's washing out too badly. I guess if I held this camera.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yep. That's perfect.
It's just the logo. So it's really nothing. No, there's nothing. The number's on the back. Unlike, I don't know. I can't believe that there's a couple of pictures floating around on the internet with people that supposedly took pictures of their brand new credit cards. And then...
Fab posted one today on Google Plus, and I posted one. I was just laughing. I was just like, okay, facepalm.
Why is everybody asking me for the numbers on the back?
My security ID is this. Why is everybody asking for it?
Yeah, and anyways. I have to question whether that's for this. I would like to think that nobody's that stupid, but I just know they are. So.
You never know. You never know.
I just know people are. They are that dumb.
They do have, what is that?
I had a how dumb are people... Yeah, the Darwin Awards.
Darwin Awards. I mean, those are out every year, and they are more amazing each year that they're out.
Yes, they are. So, but on the whole, backing up to the cloud thing, my mom actually ran out of space. She's been storing all her photos on Dropbox so that she can easily share them with my sister and I. And after our trip to Disney, she came back and she loaded up all her pictures, and guess what? She is now over her limit.
What's the limit on Dropbox?
Dropbox, her account is still only a 2 gig limit.
Oh,
Mm.
oh, geez, that's nothing.
Right.
Why
Which,
don't you spend some money, Brian, and get your mother a real account?
why would I do that when I could switch her over to Google Drive, which
And
she
get
already has, and
17.
has 15 gigs, and
Yep.
then I don't have to worry about it for another 10 years, at which point Google will probably be giving her 30 gigs of disk space free, and it won't be a problem for me anyways. Because Google's just like that. They just keep giving away disk space, mostly to put pressure on people like Dropbox.
Yeah.
But I thought it was really interesting, and of course, it did take some time because she's got to upload that 2 gigs worth of pictures again a second time. And I was looking at tools, and there are actually 2 or 3 tools out there now that will help you without having to copy them down to your connection first. For those with slower connections, there are tools out there now that will do the actual copy in the cloud to cloud, without you having to be involved in the middle.
Well, that's cool.
When Google Drive first came out, like with your email, Gmail account and everything,
Mm-hmm.
was it around like 6 or 7 gig is what they had?
Yeah, it was always a lot more than what Dropbox had, but it was all of your. No, at first it was Google Drive was separate. Now it's your Google Data. They call it your Google Data Space. There's
Yeah.
a URL which
Includes everything.
I was just trying to remember what Gmail was when it first came out. I thought it was like around 6 or 7, and which was a hell of a lot more than anybody else was giving you at the time.
I thought it was well. It continuously increased. I
Right.
vaguely remember 2. I thought we started
Was
at
it
2.
2? Yeah,
And then the
maybe.
counter was just running, and every time you log in, it'd be however many meg more.
Yeah, I can't remember. That was so long ago. That's why I was trying to wonder if anybody actually remembered what the original numbers were when we all got our Gmail accounts, because I'm sure we all got them around the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, because I got that 100 gig for 2 years because of that Chromebook that I bought. So
Oh, okay.
I'm gonna try not to get suckered into paying for it after that. But we'll see.
Well, but their disk space is relatively cheap. I just put a link in the show notes.
Yeah.
If you go out under your settings and click on storage, it will actually show you how much space you're using total, and then if you hover over it, it'll show you in each of the things. So my Google Drive is only using about 2.28 gig. I have a gig of email and a gig plus of photos of my 15 gig. Well, actually, I have 65 gig for another. I'm like Walt. I think I have a year or 2 because I bought a Moto phone. So
Yeah.
they gave me disk space. I don't
Yeah,
get
I
as
got-
much.
Yeah, the Chromebook gave me 100. I had the Quick Office promo for a while was giving you 10. That expires next year for me. Then I had 15 natively for forever. But I'm using a whole 500 meg of it. So
Yeah. But their base storage space is $199 for 100 gig. $2
Which
a
is
month,
bad. Yeah.
yeah,
which is pretty cheap.
which is the cost of the Chromebook. So if you're going to do that, and you might as well buy the Chromebook, and you get a free computer for 2 years.
$1.99 a month.
Yeah, because the Chromebook, well, the one that I got was only 150, and I get 2 years with the 100 gig. So it ends up being.
Yeah,
very
$1.99 a month is only going to be like $25 in 2 years.
Oh, a month. I'm sorry.
$50 in 2 years.
Yes.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
gonna say. It's like
Somehow I thought that was like not a month.
no.
I was going to say, that actually seems like a pretty damn good deal, Walt.
Yes.
Because a terabyte's only $9.99, which is kind of funny because that's actually a pretty significant cut below.
Yes. But that's how a lot of things are. Usually the larger you buy something, it'd be nice if they even offered, if you pay for a full year up front, that even comes a couple more bucks off that thing.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, and I have an S3. A couple of my turnkey Linux boxes, I was backing up to S3 because they have a built-in tool for doing that. And so I was backing them up, and then when I got rid of those Linux boxes, I never deleted the backups. And I'm too lazy to go kill them because it's a whopping 50 cents a month. So leave this stuff sitting there. So I'm like, whatever, it's 50 cents. It's annoying because it's 50 cents. It's a 50 cents credit card charge. So it just looks really annoying.
They probably pay more for the fees and the credit card charge than they're actually making off of you.
Yeah, no kidding.
Probably, but they've also suckered me into Prime, so what can I say? I've gotten kind of addicted to Prime, so I'm not going to get rid of it. They're making their money on me. I'm not worried. They always make their money on me. I buy stuff there. My wife buys a lot of stuff there. So, all right, guys. What else do we have to talk about? Anything else?
I think that's about it. Unless you can come up with any more stories.
So we're going to not give Joe a hard time about why he refuses to use Linux at home?
No.
I use Linux. I'm not too sure what you're talking about with that.
Just every time we ask, you don't have time to use Linux. That's all. You get that other gaming podcast thing you're doing. That's it. So, all right. If nobody has anything else, then we'll wrap it up. Follow us on Twitter as @LinuxInstall. On the Google Plus community, we have a linuxinstall.net community. If you go out there, plus.google.com/pluslinuxinstall.net. And you can follow what Walt's doing over at Jevack.com, what I guess it's just Jono, is doing over at What I'm Playing Now. And then you can follow what I'm doing over at DevOps Mastery. So, what should everybody go do, Walt?
Go install some Linux.
Bye, everybody.
See ya.